Hi everyone, I am Clare Girton and this is Around Town. This show focuses on stories and people that have impact on our homes here, in our neighborhoods, right here in our communities along the main line. As you know, I think a lot about Radnor. I wonder about how things grow and form and come to be, and I mostly think about why things change and why they don't. Today, I am lucky enough to have my guest, Liz Duffy, who just completed the first year, oh what a year, of as an elected school board director in Radnor Township. Hi Liz.
Hi, how are you?
Thank you so much for coming. I have so many questions for you, but before we start, I wanted to let you know of the questions I won't be asking you. So as an elected school board official at Radnor Township, I'm not going to be asking you any questions on the issues that come before you as a board, or your opinions, or those viewpoints of yourself or others, and that's for another day. So today I'm going to be asking you, really, I'm much more interested in how a school board official is formed and how you got to this place and your path and your story. Is that okay with you?
That's great.
Okay. Yeah. All right. So to start me off, the first thing I want to know, Liz, is first of all, full disclosure, Liz and I are friends. We overlap in a lot of ways. We have children the same age. Even our children overlap in the colleges that they go to, one of them anyway. And we also share a membership with a book group, which is pretty fun. So we know some things about each other. So I do know that you did not grow up in Radnor Township.
Right.
So walk me through. Start off a little bit about your background growing up and what brought you to Radnor, and more, what brought your family to Radnor?
Well, I grew up in Tulsa, Oklahoma, so that's, very different. And but my husband's from here, so he's from Devon. And I was married. I had lived in New York City after college. I went to school in Boston, and then I came and lived in New York City, and came here via walk down the aisle in 1996 and lived 2 years in Philly. And we decided it was time to get a house. We still were without any kids, and so we started looking. And the market at that time, you're a real estate agent, was really, really tight. It was 1997, not a lot on the market, and we lost a house in Gladwin, and literally mourned that house for one full year. And in the time of that year, we kept looking. I took a job working for a firm in Chesterbrook, so I was no longer working in the city. And I started to spend a little more time around this area, and particularly Wayne. And, I don't know, from an outsider, and you didn't grow up here either,
I
right?
did not.
So in New York, we don't really have, Route 30, the main line is really towns off of Route 30, right? It's not like Media or Westchester, right, that has like this kind of, I'd say, a little more robust town center, right? And so I think that was a time when Wayne was really starting, there's more restaurants popping up, and it started, and I said, oh, this kind of feels like a town. This feels like more of a town than, Gladwin, which is like, a hiccup, right? And certainly Devon, where my husband grew up, didn't really have a town center. So I did like it, but at that point we were so desperate for a house. So I really call it the luck of the Irish. We found a house on Hilaire Road. I mean, we've been there this Halloween. It was 22 years.
Wow.
So,
all right. So I have a couple questions. Did your husband Kevin push back at all on not wanting to be in Devon or being in Devon, or was he?
No. I mean, yeah.
So his work was in Philadelphia, and he said, "Great, wherever you think that would be a good place to land, I'm okay."
I think in that market, and I wish I could say that we were doing all the analysis and we were looking at the school systems. Now, I think I'll say we knew all these school systems were really strong along the main line. So I don't think, and my husband had gone to all private schools, so we didn't really talk about, he just didn't even know enough then, without kids. So I think why I say luck of the Irish is that if we were to move now, and I had to look for a house, I was doing the analysis from the things I know now, I'd be looking for exactly what Radnor is. Okay. Because to me, we're kind of the sweet spot. We are, just the right size. I like that we're not too big of a public school. Right. We're not, we're also not so small. Right. So so I really feel fortunate, and then just, started being a part of the community. And my husband loved, and I guess this is kind of interesting coming from someone who had gone to a private school. Once we started going through the Radnor school system, he loved the fact, like when you go to rec soccer and you start, and the more kids you have involved, more people.
Right.
And then
public and private.
Yes, private. Yes, everyone. Everyone from your community. But then when we started going to school, that we were all close.
Right.
There was no huge drive to drop your kid off three towns away.
Okay.
And he really started to fall in love with that kind of close-knit feel, as did I.
So when you bought your house, you weren't thinking schools at all?
No. I mean, I think I found out that I was pregnant while, in the process of buying the house.
Okay. So, and then your 4 kids, 2 have started kindergarten.
Yep.
And two have graduated, 2 more to go, 1 in high school, 1 in the middle school.
Yes.
Correct?
Yep.
And did you ever, along those years, think, maybe we should think about a private school for any of your children?
I mean, to say that never, yeah, of course. I mean, my kids, I think each of their journeys has been unique. Mm-hmm. And so is there a time where I've said, would there be a better environment? I think I never thought of it as in terms of the quality of education. I think we've always had, but has there been a time where I might say, would another environment, at least ask the question? I mean, I haven't ever gone so far as to seriously look, but yeah, I mean, that's come across. We have so many great choices right here, and we all have friends that have,
some in private school, some in
not,
right.
So we have a big mix.
So your opinion is, well, tell me that you're based on the individual of the
individual of the kid, and obviously you have to think of economics and all other things, but for me, if I would make that choice, even with the ones remaining, it would be about environment more than anything. Like if I thought a smaller or, maybe more attention in a different way, right? So.
Okay. So, but back to public school. So here you are. Mm-hmm. You're how many years in? 18 into the public school by the time you started?
I was thinking about that. Yes, I think it's 18. Yeah.
Right? Is that right? So, because your oldest is a senior. So 12, basically
12, 13, 14, 15, 16.
16 years into the public school. And give me sort of what happened along the line. First of all, I had a question for you. What was the work you did professional work you did before you came out to Radnor? What were you doing in the city?
I worked for Tierney. So I worked for a large advertising company in New York City. Took a job at Tierney, which I was just so lucky because I met some of such dear friends there. And then I actually moved from Tierney and jumped to client side, so I was a director of marketing.
Okay, so that you bring with you that skill set here to this, but there's a little bit of a year delay. What led you? Give me some talking points of what led you to thinking about being on the school board.
And I like that you use the word thinking about, or led you, what events, because I don't think it's one, at least for me, it's not just one thing that happened. I think it's a series, and I'd probably go back to my upbringing. I'm the youngest of 5, and I'd say my father always really instilled the values of giving back. I was in high school when he retired, because I was the baby by a number of years. And so he had the opportunity at that time to really start to volunteer. He was a business executive in finance, and he started to consult for nonprofit. And he volunteered a lot, and it started to really become a lot of what he did. This is when we lived in Tulsa. We were originally from New York, but we moved to Tulsa, and I grew up there. And I remember him saying, "Gosh, I wish I had the time to do more of this earlier on." And that he found such reward from it. Mm-hmm. And I think he kind of instilled it. My sister's a school board member, elected in New Jersey.
Okay.
So
you stay up late comparing notes?
Yes, yeah. I call her for advice. She's very wise. So, that was one. I think, this, and really, so I don't think it wasn't like, I want to change this, or I wanted to go with a given agenda. There was no single issue that led me to want to do it. I think it was more the desire to give back to a school system that just really has been really terrific for my kids and my family. So,
and as you have gotten to know the people in our community over these years, has it ever occurred to you that, that it's a really difficult decision to make? I mean, as
to raise your hand, or to just
kind of both.
Both. Okay. Yeah. I think to raise your hand. So there's a process that starts.
Right.
They kind of some people started talking to me. Would you be interested? And seriously, I'd never even really considered it.
Right.
And I kind of laugh now because I'm like, well, I didn't just like dabble or put my toe in. I decided to just take the plunge. So.
Do you remember that day?
Yeah, I do, because I remember when I finally decided to say yes, and so I said to my dad, but now I'm going to give kudos to my daughter, because she's my oldest, and raising your hand and finally saying yes, it takes courage, and I didn't appreciate that as much until that decision was before me, and. I thought, my daughter was always really involved in student government, and she lost a lot of elections before she won, and she ended up being the class president senior year, and went on to college and is involved and in elected positions. And I thought, gosh, Liz, maybe it's time to practice what you preach. You were always like, you can do this, don't be afraid. If you lose, you still put yourself forward. And we have this sign on our house that's framed that says, what would you attempt to do if you knew you could not fail? And that's kind of been a mantra with my kids, and I just kind of said, you know what, now's the time. So I kind of took the leap of faith, I think, pretty much encouraged by not just my daughter, but my kids in general, just saying, hey, I preach this, so why don't you just go try? What's the worst thing that can happen? You lose.
What was the biggest surprise once you made that decision? And then I know, it was a bit of a process, right, to go through the election process and get some support from people in the community and kind of form some alliances on how that goes. What was the biggest surprise, good or bad? It doesn't matter.
Well, we run on a slate in Radnor, and that the plus side is you're part of a team. The downside is it kind of, it's bi-party, which is kind of, that sometimes I feel is unfortunate, because school board is not, a partisan service.
Right.
But I think...
would you like to see that change?
I'd be open, yes. Yeah, I say that, and then I loved being organized, because it really was nice. We were a team, so it was really nice being new to the process to have that support system. I think it'd be really hard to be by yourself, and it's also costs a lot of money. You need the yard signs, it's a very local grassroots level.
Right.
So it was a super learning process for me, and I think, we knocked on 2,000 doors. We really, it was hard work. But I am not someone that would ever raise my hand to knock on someone's door before. It's not something that, I would say that was my forte, that I would like to just, but I will say the conversations I had with people was really rewarding.
Okay. So
getting in the streets and just learning, wow, these people really follow it. They know what's going on.
Right.
The questions they'd ask, and it's just amazing. We have amazing, people are really interesting.
So that was surprising. So here you feel like a vacuum cleaner salesperson. You knock on the door and you think they're going to say, mostly, just get out of here. But what you found is people understand and know what's happening in our community.
Yeah, and they really are appreciative of the service you're doing. School boards particularly, right? I mean, this year has been a very difficult, and there's been a lot of tough stuff, and a lot of people have, a lot of opinions and emotion around things, and understandably, because they're our kids. We care so much, and when we don't think something's going right for them, and they're missing out, it's really hard. So,
and our kids, or people who don't have kids. It's
Right.
our property values, and
Yes.
it's our
Yeah.
what's happening in the township, and it's all dovetailed in and works together.
Right.
And
So you just, but getting on the streets and like hearing from people and the grassroots nature, particularly of a school board, it's pretty terrific stuff. It's like real Americana, you know. Like,
can you tell me your most memorable door knock? Or is there someone stick out to you as one that you won't forget?
One I won't forget. Gosh, you know, I mean, to say specifically, I mean, because sometimes they're personal conversations that they get into, but let me think about that. You know, yes, there was this one couple, and they were older. You know, they were way back, and he just had so many. He was so engaged to think that because, and actually, I think his kids had gone to private school, but he was a real supporter of public school.
Okay.
And just talking about like, well, what do you think? Like asking me the questions like, why are you running? You know, like putting it back on me. So you know, it kind of upped my game. But I don't think like I'm not really giving you specifics of a conversation.
Yeah,
but
that's
it's just that
actually
idea that they would engage. And I thought, you know, this would be someone you'd think might. He wasn't just interested from a perspective like I own property in Radnor. He was interested in like, well, come on, what are you talking about?
Wanted to know about
you. Know,
you.
What do you think's the big issue? Like, why are you doing this? You know.
So in some ways, it forced you to form who
Yes.
you were and why you were, what you would bring to the table. And in a good way.
And you know, when we have kids who are of age to interview, you know, you start to go through the process of interviewing. What do we say? You know, you got to keep doing them because you get better.
Right.
So you did. You got better by the end. You know, you kind of got like, you know, your spiel. Right.
Right.
You know, so.
And how does that usually go? I'm curious because I think, oh, that would be the last thing I'd want to do is, you know, you knock on the door and then you say, hi, I'm Liz. I'm Liz Duffy.
And, well, you do put school board out there right away because they're much nicer about school board. Then you know you're not running on a party ticket or stuff. And you identify yourself. And so, and then you just say, I'm running and I really would like your support. And I'm knocking on doors because, you know, it really is important that you show up to the polls because it is, you know, local elections matter. And, you know, and then I would talk about the team that we had. So, and then, you know, ask them, what is there something on your mind? Is there something you care about? You know, so you bring, because, you know, and again, like really amazing stuff comes, you know. We talked about special education. We talked about, what else did we talk? I mean, you know, everything.
Sports,
really everything.
And infrastructure, all kinds of anything. Great. Something I think about a lot, and in light of national interests in news, politics, is that I always find comfort in when things feel like, how can I make a difference? In thinking about what happens here in our own local communities. I don't mean just in Radnor. I mean, you know, up and down the main line and
Delaware County,
and beyond. And I find it really comforting to, you know, find out, reach out, figure out that there are things being worked on, and in a partisan and a nonpartisan way, in a way that for the good.
And they really matter. I think that's, you know, like they have direct impact in people's lives, the decisions that are made on the local level, you know. And I think I was someone who probably, certainly through my 30s, probably paid much more attention, even like all about like what was going on the national level. I was really astute. I read my papers, I kept up, you know, but not really on the local. I wouldn't even think to drill down. And I think the experience of school board has made me more aware of what's going on with our county, with our township commissioner.
Oh yes.
Then you know, even our commission, you know, like the board of commissioners, and then Delco, and just all these different groups. And when you see how many people in our community raise their hand to serve, I mean, you are the girl around town. I mean, you're everywhere. But you know, the Shade Tree Committee, you've done the Parks and Recs, right? Like you start to see these people, and once you raise your hand, I think it's because I think, again, going back to the courage to raise your hand, it also seems daunting, right? It's like, you know,
how do you make a difference? How do you even?
And, you know, is it going to be too much time? How am I going to find the time? And then all of a sudden you do it, and you're in it, and you can't imagine how you couldn't do it, you know? And I think it leads you to raise your hand more. Even like, I was crazy enough to volunteer with post-prom, you know, and anybody who's experienced post-prom, right?
Not only did you volunteer, you ran it.
Yeah, but it was like, you know, you're like, oh my gosh, how am I going to transform this school into a theme and look totally different? And you're like, I'm never going to find the time, and this is too daunting. And then you're in it, and I met people that I would have never met, and laughed like I've not laughed before. You know, some of the best laughs, and just made like really fabulous friendships of people that I would have never connected with. And I think that's what volunteerism is about. You connect with people, and although you connect with people who care about something. Right, so that you do have some common purpose.
Well, something that you said earlier made me think about, you know, I guess you were saying reading the newspapers and national news, and made me think about our children who, you know, their news is in their hand, and it's oftentimes, you know, broad and narrow all at the same time. And, you know, I'm reaching to connect a little bit with how this generation of kids can feel these things that you and I are talking about, which is face-to-face, really community, getting to know people, literally your neighbors. You know, in this crazy time when we really can't be face-to-face, but that's coming soon. You know, and you see, and it almost makes you value it a little bit more. So, which brings me to my next question: is, you know, what has been the impact on your own family of this time, especially this year?
This year,
yeah.
Well, joking, I mean, my kids do call me School Board Liz. Yeah. So whenever they get mad at, like whenever they think I'm being super strict, or I'm like trying to get them on the program, or, you know, they think I'm being too rigid, they're like, oh, is this School Board Liz talking? You know, you Miss Rule follower, you know, goody two shoes. And so.
You need a badge.
Yeah. I can say, you know, they've been super supportive. But, you know, it's a lot of time. I mean, this summer, I mean, anyone who tuned in to, you know, our school board meetings, they were going to like, you know, 1 and 2 in the morning. You know, we were away on vacation. You know, I would try to get them to get out of the house. It's a little harder during times of COVID, right? Because you're like, I need space. But you know, they've you know, there's tough decisions. There's emotional stuff. So I try to talk about it a little bit, like just more like, you know, there's lots of different perspectives. So hopefully that's a lesson they learn. Like there's no one right way.
Do you have times when you were really kind of down and out, and kind of it came out to your family? Or did you?
Well, I just think they just feel like it was constant. I just think they were like, my gosh, are you always on the phone? Are you always working something? Because, you know, what about school board is there's a lot of individual conversations that happen, you know, and so it's just a lot of, you know, it's this year. I think, you know, everyone keeps saying it's not normally like that. I was like, okay, did we do like 4 years of service in 1 year?
Trial by fire.
So this is a really hard one to compare it to.
So that's my next question.
Yeah.
Would you do it again?
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I mean, in terms of I mean, what I get back from it, yeah, I think I would. You know, you have to evaluate. I do think that what I brought to the party, like at the end of the day, when you say, what did it take for you to say yes?
Right.
I think that at the time I was like, you know, I had someone in every school. When I decided to run, I had someone in every school, plus someone who had been through the whole school and graduated. So I knew what a great foundation.
You knew the corners.
I knew, yes. Yeah. And so I said, you know, listen, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not in finance, but I have real life, my ears to the ground. Like, you know, or is it nose to the ground? What is it? Ear to the ground? Whatever.
Ears, nose,
whatever.
both, yes.
The saying
boots
is.
On the ground.
Boots on the ground.
Yeah.
And so I had that perspective, and I thought that could be valuable. And I think it is, you know, because I'm living it. I've been through it. And so, you know, I think I'd have to evaluate, do I still think I bring that, you know, depending on when that next time is, you know,
Well,
I'm raising my hand.
I can say that absolutely, you know, it's really, we are so grateful, all of us in the community, and I will speak for everybody, to have people like yourself and all the school board directors who do what they do. So now we get to ask a fun question is, everybody, well, lots of people ask about Ken Batchelor. I mean, is he for real? Is he really the Ken Batchelor that he shows us? What is he really like?
I mean, Ken is, I mean, I'd say he's exactly what you see. What you see is what you get.
Really?
I mean, he really is that nice. He really is
Committed and funny.
I remember when I first, and he's probably also one of the reasons I ran, because, you know, we had gone through a revolving door for a while with superintendents, and he was everywhere, right? Like, I would go to the elementary school and he'd be there, and then all of a sudden I was at the high school for something and he's there, and he cares to be, you know, and I think that's a sign of a great leader, is someone who really is with, you know, with the school, with the teachers, with the administration, and
it's not just a job for him.
It's
It's
not a job.
actually
No,
an investment.
I really do think it's somewhat of a calling. I mean, particularly after this year, if you're doing what you're doing, you know, you've had to be called. You know, he's super skilled, right? You know, and he's a really great guy, and he does really. And the one thing I'll end with is he really does listen to all points of views, and you know, we've got a very passionate community. Smart, you know, lots of different perspectives, and I can assure you that he really does listen to everyone, and that's
great.
It's really been a gift in given the challenges of this year.
Thank you. Liz, you're the best. Thank you so much. It's always so much fun to talk. I mean, we could go on and on and on, but it is really important that we do talk about these things and bring these ideas to light, because that's how we move forward, and that's how change happens, and how we respect all those traditions that still stay the same in our small town of Wayne. So thank you so much for coming.
Thanks for having me.
And
it was fun.
maybe we'll do it again.
Excellent.